So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce my good friend, Jim Carlson, and welcome him back to the Pachyderm Club. Jim?
As Carl Peter John said, the title of this talk is "The American System of Government Works to Effect the Smooth Transition of Power." And then if we get through that, then I'm going to pivot into the Boundary Line Foundation and share with you our good work at the Boundary Line Foundation at educating and equipping local officials for engagement with administrative government when they want to make a decision. So, and during administrative processes, we have about 35 wins in engagement with administrative government. That includes Endangered Species Act, Natural Resources, monuments, etc. So if I get through that, see, I covered myself a little bit. If I get through that, I'm going to come back to that because the foundation is doing excellent work, and we're changing the world and how the nonprofit system works in terms of suing government. So, I hope to get to that. But the American system of government works to effect smooth transition of power. We've lost that mindset in America. Somehow we have this view that says, well, gosh, you know, things should be smooth and they should be comfortable, and especially the next generation. Now, this generation, not so much, but we have this view that things should be comfortable and they should be, you know, they just should hand off smoothly and with respect and dignity, and those things certainly would be good. But what we have here is we have a system that's decentralized, that was created by the framers and established to continue to transition power from generation to generation. And sometimes there's a transition of power and a handoff of power to people we don't always like or that we don't agree with, whose policies are a problem for us. Now, right now, I think it's going the right way, right? The transition's going the right way, and so the system shakes. It works. It works. The American system of government works. It has worked for 200 years, and it will continue. Sometimes I get people hang their heads, and it's on both. You know, the GOP folks, they'll hang their head and they'll say, "Jim, are we losing the republic?" And I'll say, "Well, you know, with an attitude like that, it's possible." Right? Yeah, it's never been easy. It's never been fun, and so the system shakes out grifters and lazy politicians and radicals, and it just shakes and bounces them around, and it's not pleasant, but it also balances it for the common man who doesn't participate, right? And that's the system. That's the system that was created from the founding fathers. Now, we're doing a handoff now. America is at a crossroads. We have an inflection point. There are things that are happening that we have to participate in. And so my exhortation, I'm going to have a couple exhortations. There's no extra charge for the exhortations, right? They're part of every talk. And so part of this exhortation is we must protect the constitutional framework of the American system of government. And we must do that, because that's the foundation of what is, and it's rugged, it's not perfect, but it works. So that's one, we must protect it. And the second thing we need to do is we need to educate the next generation in the beauty and the effectiveness of liberty that's coursing through the veins. It's coursing through the very marrow of our veins. Liberty is coursing through our veins. We defend it, even if things go awry. I tell people, say, "Well, Jim, what happens if the progressives take over?" And I'll tell them, you know what? Liberty is still coursing through our veins. You can't be free from this. You can't be a free person and a free man or a free woman in this country and not have it course through your veins. It gets in your marrow. It's just part of your being. And so it will continue, but we need to educate the next generation. And the second thing we need to do is this system also thwarts radicals, right? We went through an election cycle at the national level, and the American people spoke in the swing states, right? They went to the ballot box and they spoke loudly, and they gave this president a mandate. And so the American system works, and education works, and we need to educate, and it bounces radicals, it prevents tyrants from monopolizing one ideology. That's the issue, is that, and I'll refer to Marxism. You don't mind if I call it Marxism instead of progressives and all those nice squishy terms, but Marxism is an ideology, and me personally, I don't mind if people promote Marxism, so long as they don't eviscerate and they don't try and squelch the other voice. That's the issue. We need to have a system that works in our institutions and in our university system that is funded by the states and the national government, that allows for voice and the freedom of expression of ideas. That's America. The freedom of expression of ideas, where people can educate themselves, be inspired, and come to their own conclusions. That is America. So this here, as I pivot here, I call this season, this electoral season, I call it Seasons Beatings. Seasons Beatings, and the reason we say that is, it used to be Seasons Greetings, but we have election cycle. It was tumultuous, and I'm going to use an example from the Big First District to illustrate this point. Last Saturday, some of you will be familiar with this, but last summer, the GOP in the Big First Congressional District met to elect and seat delegates for the State Convention of Kansas. So the Big First met, and the chair, before that time, had sent out a list of rules and said, you got to get your nominations for your delegates in on time, right? So that's what the chairman does. And so she sent this out, and there's people that didn't send in their paperwork, right? So they came to the meeting in Hayes last week, and there was this immense tumultual churning as the people were jockeying and arguing, and there was even some yelling and all of those kinds of things. It was a rather tumultuous day of drama and voting and all those kinds of things. And at the end of that chaos, 39 delegates to the state convention were seated. So it's not too much unlike the eighth grade girls' slumber party where someone forgets to bring the nail polish. Right? I mean, it's just this chaos. But the point that's important is the system works. It churns, it grinds, it mills, and mischief is ground out, and it's not perfect, but it works. Now, those of you, if don't raise your hand, but if you've been around for 20 years in politics, I'm going to share a couple examples of you to illustrate that this is not an unusual situation in Kansas politics. For example, anyone remember the name Melvin Neufeld? Melvin Neufeld was the Speaker of the Kansas House Representatives. And Melvin Neufeld was an articulate man, and there was a lot of stuff that went on. But he was, and guess what? He got bounced by Garrett Love, a 24-year-old young man who knew how to run a Facebook campaign. Right? Speaker of the Kansas House, out. Garrett Love, in. Garrett Love ascended to a Senate district. Another example that I like this one, is a rotund farmer, with good-natured farmer, Larry Powell, displaced Senate President Steve Morris. You might remember that election. And Steve Morris walked into the election being, he was a good-looking man, real tall, dark, and handsome. Couple of things. I'd like to be tall, dark, and handsome, except when I ride on an airplane. But that's Steve Morris, and Steve Morris he lost the bid for his seat, and the system worked. It ground Steve Morris out, and that was that. And so the point is that the system works. It's not pleasant, but the U.S. constitutional system works to transfer power, and it's not pretty. it's not pretty, right? The system, people get hurt, they get discouraged, all those kinds of things. Now, it's important to say this, that those that stay above reproach in this day and age, and those that treat their fellow citizens with dignity and respect, and who study, and who live above reproach and don't put their names in Ashley Madison or all these databases and all those kinds of things, those people keep prevailing, right? If you stay above reproach, you seem to come out on top. Now there, you might take some lumps, but it's not pretty. And so we need to teach our young people, when we're educating them and equipping them and encouraging them to take our mantle, take the mantle of the nation. We need to encourage them that this is not about puppets and crayons, right? It's rugged, but it works. We need to preserve liberty. We need to thwart mischief and bounce tyrants. So Nancy Pelosi, ex-Speaker Pelosi, that may take care of itself just with age. Don't know. I don't know how that works, but maybe eventually something will happen there. But so now take Kansas example now and scale it up to the national level. We're now transitioning, right? It's called a transition for a reason, and this is part of the beauty of the system too. We have an elected president that's coming into power, and he has to seat in his administrative government 5,000 senior administrative employees in the federal government, in the agencies, put them in place. He has to have a plan. He has to put them in place, and those senior SES, they're called SESs, he puts them in place. They take over the agencies, and now they carry out the president's unitary agenda. This is like changing a corporation in the matter of a few weeks. And so there's all this dust in there, and by the way, I hope to be one of them. I hope to be one of them. And so I've been working on this for about 7 months, and I'm not necessarily a networker. I'm not a political type, but I am knowledgeable, and I'm definitely for 100% American, about America, and I certainly am a bare knuckles warrior. So I hope to be selected there. But here's an example. Here's an example that I want to share with you. I was talking 2 days ago. This will give you a little glimpse. I can't share with where I'm headed or where I'd like to be headed. But I was talking with former Secretary David Barnhart, and he wrote a book. And by the way, I highly recommend that book. It's called "You Report to Me." You Report to Me. And Secretary Barnhart wrote this book, and it's recent. It's published this year. And there's an excerpt in there that I'm going to share with you. And he was in Florida, so Secretary Barnhart's taking leave. He's down in Florida. It's in the winter. And he runs into this Fish and Wildlife Service employee. And so he says, well, what do you do? And she says, right, Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, right? Right? And he says, well, what do you do? And she looks at him and she says, I speak for the mice. What? Yes, I speak for the mice. And so he says, let me get this straight. You're a federal employee of the United States of America for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is a subdivision of the Department of Interior, and you speak for the mice. What else do you do? And so the answer is given, but the point is that's some of what we have in administrative government that needs to be changed, right? Administrative government is to carry out the delegated mission of the Congress of the United States that was enacted to fulfill the mission of the agency. In U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's case, it's to carry out the Endangered Species Act. Now, if you talk to mice to get that done, well, okay, I mean, you might write a book yourself. But the point is that federal employees, we've gotten a little off mission. We've gotten a little off mission. And so, but the point is the other point is that the system will work, and I want to share with you a little bit of things that I see. Now, I'm speaking for Boundary Line Foundation. I'm speaking for Jim Carlson here. But one of the things we as conservatives need to do going into this next administration, this is not going to be roses. The policies that this president is proposing to cut grants and to cut jobs and to manage attrition and maybe agencies will affect the economy of the world. When America, remember the old saying, when America sneezes, the world catches a cold? The last two, the Biden administration and the Obama administration, which Biden was just Obama round 2, has continued to operate the Treasury, U.S. Treasury has continued to operate the printing press, and in my opinion, that is that's what's causing rampant inflation, right? It's just simple economics, and I'm sure there's economists in here that know much, much more than I do, but if you put more units into the system, it devalues the individual unit of dollars. So that's one, but when you continue to print, and then you stop spending, there's going to be pain. And the reason I say all of that is to encourage this group to stay behind the president when things get a little rough, right? We're in the honeymoon period, and that's great, right? Let's just enjoy this. Let's enjoy this time, but it's going to get a little rugged, and that's the world according to Jim. Maybe not, I hope not, but it may get a little rugged. So, but that goes back to how we as Americans and Republicans should consider operating and carrying on the framework of the system of the United States that is so beautiful, right? The American experiment, American exceptionalism is real, right? It's what gave us flight. It's what gave us portion of the internet. Or was that Al Gore? Yeah. Right? We're amazing people. We solve problems. During the Great War, World War II, and if you're a veteran within the sound of my voice, bless you and bless you again. The Great War, we came together. Now, see, we're also slow, right? I mean, in October of 1938, Hitler rolled in, the panzers rolled in, and the Poland were still they were a cavalry. They were still fighting by horseback in 1938 when Blitzkrieg rolled into Poland. And then you get into the 1940s and Americans, okay, well, we're going to just sit this one out. We'll send over supplies, and then the U-boats started sinking. By the way, the U-boats are brilliant. If you if you go to Chicago, look at the U-boat exhibit. It's one of 2 in the world, and it's absolutely fascinating. They called them pig boats because they were so rank after all these 50 sailors being on there for like months, right? Really bad. But the technology was amazing. And yet all these U-boats were sinking our merchant ships. Men and women died, and cargo didn't make it over to the Britain. Some got through. And then the Americans got ticked off, and then we started, Chrysler Corporation, we started manufacturing, saying, hey, we got to get involved. Right? That's America. We're a little late, but guess what? You can count on us once we get going. And that's what's going to happen, I think, coming up, is we got to regear and you retool and get some airplanes out on the line, and let's bring manufacturing back to the country. All right, I know this is being videoed, so I want to make sure and say, let's bring coal back. Coal, right? Old King Coal was a merry old soul, right? Coal is an energy source. We know we have the technology to protect the environment. We keep doing that. We need to be conservation oriented. We need to be wise stewards of the land. But guess what? And I have no problems at all with renewables. No problems at all with renewables, as long as there's a free market and they compete for themselves. No subsidies. Right? No. Level playing field on that. So government subsidies work to get things started, but inevitably government policies almost invariably result in the opposite of their intent. Right? And I'm not anti-government. We need government. But that's what we need. With that, I'll touch on the Boundary Line Foundation, and I'll take a few questions or comments. The Boundary Line Foundation, what we do at the foundation is we educate and equip county commissioners, now sheriffs, to engage in government as using the 10th Amendment. We put wheels on the 10th Amendment. That's what we say. And so what we do there is you have federal agencies. Now, the Administrative Procedures Act requires federal agencies to do certain things. And what those things are is when they go out and they want to make a rule, like Fish and Wildlife Service wants to list a species, or Department of Interior, Bureau of Land Management wants to have a policy, and there's a thing called the Administrative Procedures Act. We all know about it, and that's the comment period. But what we do there is we do policy documents at the beginning of the process. We do statutory analysis of these rules, and they're really good. They're at the level that they can be put in the Library of Congress. So we go back to case law, we do an analysis. We're doing an analysis right now on the OSHA Emergency Response Standard Rule. Anybody heard of that? Okay, and just finger wag. The OSHA Emergency Response Standard Rule will put emergency responders and volunteers across the nation under the Department of Homeland Security and Incident Management. It is an onerous rule of biblical proportions, epic proportions. And that's just one of these rules that's out there. So we did an analysis of that rule. We organized the sheriffs, the Sheriff's Association to oppose it. We trained them in a workshop, and we took those sheriffs and we engaged them in the hearings and did other things. We've been at this for 9 months right now. The policy documents are excellent. Then we trained the sheriffs, and now it's activism. Now, this is how we're changing the nonprofit apparatus of how nonprofits operate, and also how activism is performed. You see, what it's called ideation, and everyone in this room will be familiar with. And I want to make sure to couch this right, but your heritage foundations, your American First Policy Institutes, all of your really quality nonprofits that generate really good policy documents. What's happening is the billionaires that fund all of these nonprofits are aging, and we're realizing that we have to get in the trenches. We have to have bare knuckles. We can't just throw policy documents over the wall and hope it works, because it's not. So we need both. And so Boundary Line Foundation bridges that gap. And so now we train and equip county commissioners, we give them policy documents, and then we train them to engage with agencies during the processes, and it works great. We've changed about 35 to 40 decisions in federal agencies, including rollback of a monument. We have an executive order. We're absolute bare knuckles, and we treat men. One of our hallmarks that my staff will roll, they'll eye roll on this one, and I'll say, you always treat people with dignity and respect. Even if the Marxists are slamming you down and you're losing that argument, you always treat people on the other side with dignity and respect that disagree with you, and there's a reason for that. Is number one, it's the right thing to do if you're a Christian. We're called to account to that, and we're called by Scripture to do that. But the other reason is it makes them go, you know what? I didn't like how Carlson trounced me, but I kind of liked him, right? They want to come back and play. And so when you take the moral high ground, it works. So that's Boundary Line Foundation. We educate. Oh, there's one more piece that I should share with the group. We have 3 buckets. The documents is one. The training of the local officials is a second. And this is the third thing we're doing, and it's really getting attention and winning at least attention across the board. And that is, we have a litigation spotting and equipping program where at the beginning of the Administrative Procedures Act process, we start researching for litigation to sue the agencies. And we work with law firms. Pacific Legal Foundation, we've caught their attention, and they're working with us and they work with us. We equip the public record, and we're ready for a lawsuit. The minute that OSHA rule comes out, then we're ready for a lawsuit if we have funding, and we have to have the funders. And then all of a sudden, people go, wait a minute. So we have a lawsuit. We walk it across the street. We hand it to the public interest law firm, and it's shovel ready to take down the rule. There you go. So 3 buckets, and we're getting attention there. And that's going to change the way litigation is done in America and the way we sue government. And I'll tell you why. Remember during the 2020 general election, and you had all these lawsuits filed, right? The Supreme Court, I know there was at least 60 that were filed. 18 attorneys general went to the Supreme Court and filed a lawsuit on elections, and they got kicked out for standing. Anybody remember that? Yeah, we got some hands going up. Now, why is that? Is that because the judicial system is corrupt? Maybe. But what it really means is this, is attorneys are not well equipped to do research. They're lawyers. And so we start equipping the record early in time with case law, detailed case law and strategy. By the way, the emergency response standard rule is the first application of Loper-Bright. We applied Loper-Bright decision to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration rule that they haven't even decided on. If they move ahead with it, we've set up a non-delegation constitutional charge against OSHA by the sheriffs. It's already in the public record. That's pretty cool. Right? There you go. I mean, that's good stuff. So with that, I'll take questions or comments or what have you. I hope my voice, was I close enough to the podium for you to hear me? I guess it's too late, but.
Thank you, Jim. We'll have some questions from the audience. So first, we're going to start with Pachyderm members. And so whenever you have a question, be sure to raise your hand up high for me. So we'll start with James.
Yeah, my understanding, even before you go to litigation, that once an agency puts into effect a regulation, Congress has so much time they can cut it off right there. So, do they ever use that?
Yes, that's called the Congressional Review Act, and that's a 1995 act that once the regulations put in place, and BLM took advantage of this in their Conservation, Landscape, and Health Rule. Once a regulation is enacted, then it starts a clock, and that's why the Biden administration was really slick on one rule, but it starts a clock, and then once that clock runs out, you cannot file for CRA. But during Trump administration 1, there were three or four or five rules that were taken down. One of them was, by the way, the BLM planning 2.0 rule on public lands, and guess who equipped the record? Boundary Line Foundation. The Senate used our work to roll back planning 2.0 under CRA. So we ought not rely on Congressional Review Act, because once the clock runs out, then we're stuck with the rule. Both sides know about this. It's a game. The other thing is, and the other thing, and I'll get your question in a minute. The other thing is, how many of us want to depend on the Congress? Oh, we got someone over there. I'll say we've got one here, sir. I'll talk to you after. Yeah, but I don't want to depend on the Congress, right? We've got at least 90 card-carrying Marxists in the Congress, so I don't want to depend on the Congress. It is part of the system that I'm recognizing and that I appreciate. But if we don't like it, what do we need to do? Vote them out.
So you talked about billionaires aging out and so forth, not having funding. So how do you get your funding?
We're a nonprofit. So we're a nonprofit, and we go and knock on doors, and we raise funds for our projects. Now, so we're knocking on the doors of the billionaires too. But what's happening, this is what's happening. You really want to know, I'll just be frank about this. What's happening in our world is we are concerned about mission, we're concerned about credibility, and we're concerned about making a difference. I have an apparatus that I can show you. It's really complex, very engineering-ish, and we demonstrated that it works. And now what's happening is we're getting the attention of your heritages, your America First Policy Institutes, your filers, Sean Filers, and all of these billionaires, but they're used to supporting the old way, right? And so we're winning now, and they're saying, wait a minute. Now you have Leonard Leo 85 Club, right? Leonard Leo is a bare knuckles, what do you call the guys that make their money through? Anyway, Leonard Leo, he's very interested in things on the ground that work, that are ideologically based, and sound and based on principles and all that. So did that answer your question? Okay. You notice how I use that as a pitch, right? Yeah, we need money, by the way. There's a box by the, we need money, by the way, so if you can help us, please feel free to do that. Go ahead, sir.
Can you explain how we can dismantle the administrative state? I know Vivek has talked about dismantling the administrative state and using the DOGE committee to do that. How is the process going to work? Were they going to recommend reductions in a certain administrative state and then send that to the Congress?
Okay, so I had already expressed an interest in being in the administration, so I'll share this, that to start with, this is the opinion coming from Jim Carlson. I'm not speaking for the administration, right? Got to do that. So having said that, but being a subject matter, probably the subject matter on administrative government, here's how I would do it, is I would first of all go after grants. Most bureaucrats, most agencies are run by grants. Bureaucrats generally don't work that hard, and they have contractors under them, and they're all grant forms. So I'd look at the contractors, and I'd say, okay, do these contractors have ideological affiliations? If so, then I might cut off those funding sources. So that's one. Second, a full 15% of the federal workforce is retiring this year. Now, during the Trump administration, if you do that math, 15 times 4 is 60. So you got a full 60% of the federal workforce retiring during the Trump administration. There's a great opportunity not to fill those jobs. Third is that I would rewrite all of the plans, all the performance plans for many of these bureaucrats. I'd rewrite the performance plans for these bureaucrats, and I would say, we're no longer going to do diversity. We're going to be about mission. Actually, here's what I would do, is I would say, what is the statutory mission of this agency? Well, I don't know. And I'd say, okay, we're going to have a program where you learn the statutory mission of this agency, and if your job is consistent with that, then you're in good shape. Right? And if your job isn't, then we need to find a way to either make you productive, just like people that make widgets out in the field, the regular guys and gals, and so that's how I would do that. The other thing is I'd bring people back from telework. Telework goes away, gone, done, right? If you're really dog sick, don't come into the office and call in for that meeting. But do you know that 12%? Here's the number: 12% of the office space in D.C. is occupied. Now that means 88% of the office space in D.C. is unoccupied. Those are all buildings that the American people are paying for. Right? You got to heat them, you got to keep mice out of them, all of it. You can tell I'm from the country. Does that answer your question, sir?
Okay, your question?
Jim, thanks for coming. What do you think about the Convention of States movement?
Would you like an honest, genuine response? I have, so what's the group? I'm going to take a poll. What's the group? Raise your hand if you want an honest and genuine response. Raise your hand if you don't want reality in the world according to Jim. Okay, here it is, sir. I respect your viewpoint and I respect your passion. But here's what's going to happen. If you call a convention of the states, guess who's going to be on the other side of the table? The progressives. And they're going to have their attorneys. They're going to be backloaded or front-loaded for war, and we're going to lose. And so the last thing we want to do is open up the Constitution of the state or the national Constitution when the other side is going to be there to trounce us. The second thing is that we already have the ballot box, we already have state legislators, we already have the system that in place that works, and all we have to do is use it. I do understand it. I do understand the Convention of the States. Yeah, we could have dialogue over that. But my opinion, sir, with all respect to you and all your passion and your hard work, I support your you can have that viewpoint. But I just don't think conservatives are up to the challenge. Okay, there we go. Next question. Give me a light one. Give me a light question, like how many daughters I have or this kind of thing. Okay, let's bring it on. Oh, Bud Light, you know, they took a hit because of the trans deal. That's, people spoke with their dollars. Go ahead.
And you're going to get ready to take a hit yourself here. How about if we have an agency that enforces the Constitution? Their sole purpose is to enforce our rights in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Oh, well, I have a two-part response to that. Yeah, the first part response to that is what Boundary Line Foundation is doing. So we're educating and equipping local commissioners to carry out their duties of office and state too, not just county commissioners, not just sheriffs, state people who want to engage agencies in administrative processes to push administrative government back. So we're already doing that. And why are we doing that? Because Congress isn't doing its job. Why do we need another agency in the executive branch of government that the Congress should be itself doing?
All right, you ready for another question?
Let me check my time. It's
That was a Bud Light question. Here's a little heavier one.
Oh, good.
Oh, another question, just want to make a point on the convention states that that is a call for a convention states it is not a constitutional convention.
I stand corrected on that.
Okay, any other questions today? Yep, right here.
I appreciate your plug for I think it's Pacific Legal Institute or
Foundation.
Yeah. I've seen them on YouTube, good group of folks. Kind of to the point of the agency question, as well as the Convention of States issue. Both are an idea, required action from people that should be engaged in doing it. Follow the 10th Amendment Center, and if you could shameless plug for them, I'm sure you're familiar with them. Wonderful group, got some good information on YouTube, but an ignorant electorate is the worst enemy.
It is. It's a republic if you can keep it. Okay, so who can recite for me the 10th Amendment of the Constitution? You don't have to do it perfectly. I'm going to use it as a springboard. Who can recite it for me? There we go. We got a judge over here. I'll bet he's a judge. Oh, he's not. Okay, you ought to be.
Basis that any powers not given to the federal government are given to the state.
And? Okay. Now, the Boundary Line Foundation interprets that "and to the people" to be county governments. And I'll tell you how we got there. Is that the 10th Amendment of the Constitution was promulgated during a period when they were talking about government. So, and to the people, that's county, that's local government. So local government are part of the 10th Amendment. Now, that we call that also the enumerated powers. It constrains the powers of the national government, and it says it delegated back to the states, or actually the states delegate to the federal national government. Let's get this right. And to the people. So the states are the center point, right? And that's as it should be. So in American framework of government, the states are the center, right? And that's where the battle is. And so we now have federal folks now. We have a president that believes in that. And we see that. Let's use, for example, the trans bathroom deal, right? And the Dobbs decision, right? The Dobbs decision, no matter how you feel about it, pushed power back to the states. The Supreme Court said, listen, we're going to get out of the business of regulating abortion. We're going to get out of that. And we're going to push it down to the states. And now what you're seeing at the states is this patchwork of decisions that are going on, okay? And that's as it should be. Now, I don't necessarily agree with some of the decisions that are coming out, but that's where the battle is. It should, because, and why is that? So, here's why. The closer government is to the people, the better off you are. When government is moved up line, then you can't affect decision making. And that is the brilliance of the system.
Got a quick comment for you.
I just want to state that Thomas Jefferson said the best government is the government that's closest to the people. Thomas Jefferson.
Wow, and so Jim Carlson, this little bitty guy in western Kansas, agrees with Thomas Jefferson. Wow, cool. Yeah, we like that.
Thank you. We got another question here.
Yeah, you talk about you're wanting to join the administration for Trump. That's great. Everybody knows how easy it is to tear things down. You know, fire people, let them jobs disappear. But one aspect of it is to bring the country to more intelligent sources. You know, renewables are a joke. And like the Biden administration, they're destroying thorium reactors. And that's going to be the cheapest, safest form of energy going. So what has the administration got to build things up?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, like for instance, you're saying we're going to get rid of these employees. That's easy.
I didn't say that.
You said that 15% are going to retire. All you got to do is just let them slide out the door, and then you got the people. But your comment on coal, bring coal back.
Right.
All right, I agree with that. I think right now the Biden administration is destroying the fuel for thorium reactors. And yet, the other countries, as a matter of fact, we're building them in Southern California and shipping them overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody in the administration thinking about what to do to build them back up?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think I said it earlier, is you need to bring manufacturing back to America. And in order to bring manufacturing back to America, you need to deal with environmental regulations in a positive fashion. And so what does that mean? We have to have a competitive environment, right? People need to be able to take things out of the ground to produce widgets on a competitive basis with China. Now, China is one of the biggest promoters of climate change, right? And they themselves are building power plants just across. They recognize coal. They recognize the value, the low-cost energy of coal. So why are they pushing their policies on the West? Well, because the West is buying into it. So, right? And so we need to address that situation, right? We have to have this is the bottom line. We have to have an inexpensive energy. We have to have materials to build things, right? You don't build things without materials. So that means we have to mine. That means we have to log. That means we have to manage our water sources in a way that is consistent with the Federal Land Policy Management Act on public lands, and I'm all for that, right? In a way that conserves those resources for our future generations. I will say this, is the policy, I think we have the wrong idea of what conservation really means. I think that's the bottom line. We bought into something that we really don't understand is how it's affecting us. We have to have jobs. We have to build widgets. I personally don't want my children working for a Chinese firm. I want my children building widgets in America and adding value to the country. Got someone over here.
On the subject of getting rid of our dependence on bigger government, just a question for you. How do we get the lowest level of governments, the city governments, the county governments, the townships, to think limited government, so they don't pump the request for money upstream, and we keep that big government because of that? I worked in small government for 16 years, and everybody said, we need a grant. No, we don't. We don't need a grant. We need to take care of ourselves and live within our means.
So was that a how question or a comment? If it was a how question, I'll respond to it.
How can we do that?
Okay, it was a how question. So I have your permission to respond to that with genuineness. And here's the problem we have, is local government, that includes counties and cities, have been conditioned by the states. It's a culture. to be recipients and not, they just go up and hold their hand up to the higher government and say, this is how we should do business. That's not how county commissioners should be trained to operate. County commissioners should be trained to conserve, but they should also be trained to bring businesses into their county and to encourage local growth, not of big box stores. That's what we're doing in Finney County. We're just moving the wealth around. We have to build widgets. So basically what's happened is we bought into the national culture where the money comes down from the federal government, it comes into the states, and then the states dole it out, and then it comes down to the counties, and we have to change that culture. And if we go back and dig into the statutes and the statutes for county commissions in the state of Kansas, you'll find that you'll see that counties can do things themselves. And so we have to break that cycle. It's a culture.
I'll throw out one point of general.
Oh dear.
Cities, counties, and school districts are all creations of the state. Why is your focus on the local unit? Actually, the real focus should be at the state level, because the state created the counties, created municipal corporations. In fact, we had a school district close recently, I believe out in Scott County, and the school district is all done under the authority of the Kansas Association of Kansas State Board of Education approved it. So it's this really a state issue more than a local issue, or maybe this is a little bit of chicken and egg?
Well, I could dodge the question by saying yes, it's a state issue, but you're bringing me in to comment on. May I comment on and what is it? 69% of the budget of the state of Kansas goes to K through 12. Is that a good number? It's higher than that. Higher ed too. So we'll include higher ed in also to that. So $7 out of $10 in Kansas go to education. And are we getting our money's worth? All right. And so where'd that decision come from to pump all this money into K through 12? It came from the court, right? So now here's the problem you have. If the legislature of the state of Kansas would come out and say, no, that's our prerogative, and yank that back for the Supreme Court, and I better not use that word, yank that back from the Supreme Court of the state of Kansas, bring it back, have the guts, and said, you know what, we're going to fund you at this level, and then we're going to enter a voucher system, and we're going to make education competitive, and we're going to privatize it, and we're going to give state money to the winners. Then what will happen is it'll be competitive in Kansas, and then you'll start seeing better education, less money spent, and now some of the administrators, the bureaucracy of the school districts will change a little bit. You won't have as high paid administrators. So anyway, how's that for a response? Did that cover some of it? Okay.
Thank you, James. Thank you very much.